Just one more hour until reinforcements, aka me, arrive to save the day. But until then, keep your eyes on the highway and keep on trucking with Jimmy Mack on Road Gang Radio, y'all.
Hey guys, it is the longest running segment of any segment on RadioNemo.com since Dave has been doing talk radio as opposed to music radio. This is the segment that has run the longest, and of course, because of that, it is one of the most popular, and it is a great segment. We love having Robert Braswell, the executive director of the ATA's Technology and Maintenance Council, join us for Tech Talk with TMC. Good morning to you, Mr. Braswell.
Well, good morning back to you, Jimmy Mack. Great to be back here for the show once again. And this week, we're very pleased to welcome back to the program Pat Meisenholder, who's Vice President of Sales with Advanced Wheel Sales. She's going to be sharing with us her expertise on tires and wheels. You know, Pat is one of the folks who literally helps us write the book when it comes to tire and wheel maintenance. And today, we're going to be talking about some tire maintenance, repair, and specification practices we think you should know as we head into the winter driving season. But before we bring Pat onto the program, as you know, each week we like to make a special offer available to our listeners. And this week it's our TMC Radial and Tire Disc Wheel Conditions Digest. We're offering it for the special price of just $25 plus shipping and handling. To order, you can call our customer service line toll free at 1-866-821-3468. Just mention Radio Nemo. You will get it for that special price. It's a great primer that you can keep in your glove box, keep in your pocket on all the different conditions about tires and wheels that you may encounter and you may need to explain to a dealer when you're getting service. So it's a real great thing to have in your cab. What's more, if you're an owner-operator or a small fleet, and you got 100 or fewer power units, you can join TMC for the discounted annual dues of just $150. And you do that today, you'll receive our 2-volume recommended practices manual, about 4,000 pages of just about every kind of information you can think of when it comes to the maintenance and repair and speccing of commercial vehicles. There's also many other good benefits too, so just call that same toll-free number I gave out if you're interested in signing up. And of course, at the top of the program, we always remind our listeners that any recommended practices we discuss reflect the consensus of our members. We offer them as recommendations only, and everyone must first determine for themselves if they are safe and appropriate for their operation. Please remember that TMC doesn't endorse any product, person, or service, and the opinions expressed on the show are those of the individual and not necessarily the opinion of his or her company, nor TMC unless stated otherwise. And with all that out of the way, please welcome to the program this morning, Pat Meisenholder. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Robert. How are you today?
Doing great, doing great. You know, the weather is starting to get a little bit nippy in a lot of parts of the country. And whenever that happens, we start thinking about, well, how do we get ready for the winter driving season? And so we thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring you on the program and talk about some of the things that you need to know before you start getting into those mountain passes and have to worry about things like chains and, slippery conditions. So let's get right into it. What are some of the things we need to pay attention to about our tires and wheels to make sure we're ready for what's to come?
Well, I think the best thing, if I had to choose a life in the afterlife, I think my life would be called a tire because I would never have to worry about daylight savings time. And daylight savings time right now has really messed me up because I'm waking up at the wrong time and going, staying up too late, getting up too early, and it's just too crazy. I can't figure it out. And tires are lucky because they don't care what time of the day it is. It's just they get up and they go, and they don't care about anything except if it's cold or if it's hot. They do care about that and how much air pressure they have inside of them, of course. So,
well, it's actually inflation pressure, right? We call it inflation pressure, not air pressure, but you get the idea. So there's a big difference when it comes from going to a very cold climate to a very warm climate. You can lose, what is the rule of thumb? Is it 1 or 2 psi for every 10 degrees of temperature Fahrenheit?
Exactly. And if you think about if you're a trucker and you're starting off in Florida and you drive up to Minnesota and you get up and it's nice and cold up there for you, my Minnesota accent might come out because, it's really cold and it's 30 degrees when you wake up and you think I was just in Florida and it was 70 degrees. Well, your tires will feel that difference as well. And like you said, you're losing 2 psi, I think, for every 10 degrees of air pressure outside. So when we say ambient air temperature or when we're monitoring a tire when it's cold is whatever it is outside. So if you are doing a northern southern route if you are going from, Texas to Minnesota and back, air pressure is really important for you to pay attention to during the fall months when things are still, there's a lot of variation, and especially since winter is right around the corner, and sadly, it's going to be colder everywhere.
So if you start out in a cold climate, let's say it's 20, 30 degrees in Minnesota, you're heading down to Texas. Uh, you want to
Right.
make sure that you're fully ready for the load being carried, because that's what you're going to measure by, not necessarily what it says on the sidewall of the tire, but the load being carried with a little bit of a safety margin.
Right.
And factor in that maybe it'll swing 5, 6, 7 degrees, maybe more, maybe 20, 30 degrees. That might change 5 psi, maybe 10 psi during the course of that trip, right? Not including the 10 to 15% change you get from the tire warming up itself. So I guess the question is, what do drivers need to do by the time they get to the end of their route? Do they have to worry about they got too much inflation? I mean, chances are I would think a little bit extra inflation is going to be a whole lot better than underinflation.
Exactly. If you need to worry about it, what's the lesser of two evils? Overinflation is a much better problem to have. You should never, ever bleed air out of a tire. When tire pressures are designed by the tire designer, when they are designated at cold operating pressure. And cold for a truck tire means 3 hours of sitting still. So we sat still for 3 hours. Now we can check our pressure to find out what our true pressure is in that tire. But when I went through tire school way back when, we used to do a math, question and try to figure out, okay, the trucker is going from here to here. He's carrying X amount of load. He's fully loaded, or he's not loaded at all. What should his target pressure be? And you notice I said target pressure, not exact pressure, because at the end of the day, all of those calculations should just mean I need a safety factor so that when I am at my full load, I can carry my full load. And when I'm worried about going to Minnesota, down to Texas, I have enough air pressure that'll maintain that variance. So normally, whatever your operating loaded pressure is at the heaviest, if you add 5 psi to that, or 10 psi if that's where you feel more comfortable, do that, and then don't worry about changing your pressure every time you check your tires. Just check your pressures. And when you're checking your pressures, you should be checking if they're hot and you don't have the opportunity to wait. You're checking a side-to-side variance. Your left front should be carrying about the same amount of target pressure as your right front, operating pressure, I mean. So your pressure should be the same across the axle. If you check an inside dual and it's 20 psi below the outside dual, something's wrong. You need to stop.
So we covered Minnesota to Texas. Now, making the return trip back from Texas to Minnesota, don't necessarily worry about adding pressure along the way unless you need it. Just make sure before you leave to head back north, you factor that into whatever your target pressure is going to be before you start your trip.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Great. Well, I think we kind of covered the whole thing about pressure. Another thing that people don't think about is elevation, right? You can actually change your PSI as you go up in elevation.
Yes. And again, if you're going from now, if we're in the Reno and we're going down to Las Vegas and we've got that cold, and now we've got, the hot sun down in Vegas. Again, just figure out what is that worst operating condition and set your target pressure there, and then just let it be. One of the worst things I have ever seen is when as a passenger or a consumer in a passenger car going into one of those quick lube places, and they do a service and they check your air pressure, and you hear them bleeding the air out.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
Yeah. If you're a mom, or you have a mom, or you have a car and you go into one of those places, don't let them bleed the air out of your tires. Please don't let them do that.
Look, I did that one time. I had the same experience one time at one of those places, and I had to explain to them why that was not a good idea, and they thought I was from Mars. So
yeah.
Anyway, no, you're absolutely right. A little bit of education goes a long way. Well, let's go ahead and talk about some other things related to, tires. Well, let's start with pre-checks. We talked about inflation pressure, but there's other things to look for besides proper inflation pressure when you're doing your pre-trip.
Mm-hmm. Well, there have been more and more systems, TPMS systems, put on trucks lately. They've been on cars for a while, but trucks are starting to get them. And a lot of times one person might think, a driver might think, well, I have a TPMS, I don't need to do a pre-check. And that's really not true.
Right.
Either way, whether you're doing a pre-check with a TPMS sensor on there or not, you should always go around and check all tires, even those inside ones that are hard to see, and see, as much of the quadrant that you can without rolling the truck, of course. But checking that air pressure all the way around, because beyond the air pressure, you're also looking for cuts. You're looking for unexpected dings in the wheel. And then right next to that, you might see a bubble in your tire because you accidentally ran over a curb on that tight turn that you didn't realize it actually hurt the tire. You can look for things like that. You're looking for punctures. You're looking for nails that are in there that could be causing a slow leak. And then you're also looking to make sure you have your valve caps on, especially at this time of the year. What a lot of times we like to recommend are the dual seal valve cap, which means you can still check air pressure from the outside, but it's protecting the valve cap on the inside. It's about $2 at a truck stop. If you don't want to invest in those, that means you have to take off the valve cap, then get your hand in there, check the air pressure, and then try to rethread that valve cap on the inside dual. Even, as a female with little bitty hands, that is hard for me to do, especially if my hands are cold. They're not working right, and I can't get my hand in there to get rid of that, or to get that inside valve cap reinstalled, so it might fall and I might leave it. And that's where the dual seal valve cap comes in handy. Plus, if there's snow out there or sand out there and you don't have that valve cap covering your valve core, your valve core is only held by, I think, 2 little threads. So if it's held only by 2 little threads and it's got some sand in there, it has a good opportunity for it to wiggle loose, and then you have a flat tire, and the only thing that was wrong was the valve core got loose.
And it's very important to understand that valve cap is the final seal. It's not the Schrader valve, but it's the valve cap that's the final seal for that whole system to ensure you're not losing air out of the tire, right?
Exactly. It's a $800 or $1,000 tire, and you've got the road call on top of that, and the lost load, lost revenue time, lost hours, all because we didn't have a valve cap on the inside.
And while you're down there checking out the tires for gauges, cuts, punctures, snags, take a look at the metal that's on the inside of that tire, right? It's where the wheel resides, the fasteners. Take a look for loose fasteners, broken, missing fasteners, cracks between the bolt holes or anywhere in the tire. Things like that you can spot before you get down the road and possibly have some serious calamity happen. So it's good to take a look at all that at the same time.
Exactly.
So, we've talked about, things to take a look for in the pre-check operating conditions. There's always road hazards. There's things you can do everything right in the pre-check, but still something's going to happen as you go down the road. What are a couple of the things that we have to worry about as you're going down the road when it comes to tires? It seems to me you see a lot of what we call gators or rubber on the road. They get a bad rap. Sometimes people that don't know any better think, oh, it's just these retreads that are out there, and that's what the problem is. But we know from actual data and analysis, it's not necessarily that they're retreads. It happens to be a lot of retreads out there because there's a lot of retreads on the road. The problem is it's all the tires, right? And mainly due to what? Underinflation?
Yes, sir. It's mostly due to tires running flat. And if the tire is running flat, it could be because of road debris. It could have been something that was a puncture that was slowly ignored, and you never really took advantage to when you had downtime to repair it, or you might have unexpectedly run over something. In that case, it's more of an impact. But when it is run flat in dual, a lot of times what will happen is one tire will run flat in dual, and you'll continue to go, and you'll replace one tire, and then you'll go 30 or 40 more miles, and then that second tire that wasn't replaced will then go, because that tire had been running overloaded for the conditions that it was in. It still had the right amount of air pressure, but it lost its dual, so it was doing twice the load. So those are the types of operating things that can happen. But when a tire is running flat, there's really 2 things that are happening. Its internal temperature is increasing beyond its ability to cool itself off. So the tire inside is literally melting. And then the other thing is the tire casing plies that are on the outside, the sidewall plies, those are flexing in the wrong spot, and they're being damaged by that. And both of those conditions are permanent. If you say, I'm sorry, I won't do it again, the tire doesn't care. It is going to happen. It is going to run flat. And when you go to add air the next time, it could potentially zipper. And those are the things that we really want to look for when we're talking about operating conditions of a tires and dual.
You're listening to Tech Talk with TMC. We have Pat Meisenholder, Vice President of Sales with Advanced Wheels Sales, with us talking about things to know about tire maintenance, repair, and specification as we head into the winter driving season. Pat, you mentioned the zipper condition. That's basically when the casing seems to lose its tread, as if you took a zipper and zipped it around the sidewall. And again, that's mainly due to the increased heat because of the flexing, because of the underinflation or overload condition. So that's definitely something you have to worry about. You have to worry about those punctures that you pick up on the side of the road. And there's right ways and wrong ways to try to do a puncture repair. Let's talk a little bit about some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to tire repair. If you are on the side of the road and you have to get road service, maybe these are some of the things you look out for to make sure that the vendor that you're working with is doing it reputably.
It's really the most important thing about doing a tire repair is to make sure that they demount that tire from the wheel and do it the right way, which is called a plug and a patch. That's the best way to do it. Now, you may think, I've got a load, I've got a downtime, I want to hurry home to get home for Thanksgiving. I don't want to drive in the dark. There might be a reason why you think you should put a rope repair in your tire, but I really urge you not to do that. They are never, ever the solution unless it's for your wheelbarrow or your lawnmower. They work well there. But a rope repair...
Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say, a rope repair, they allow moisture to continue to get into that steel casing. Different about a truck tire versus my lawnmower tire that I just mentioned. Once that moisture gets into that steel casing, it's going to continue to rust, and it's just going to ruin the tire. And then those steel belts will delaminate, and there will be a tread separation, and then you'll see another one of those gators on the side of the road, and you'll wonder, why are all these tires falling apart? Some of them are due to the rope repairs that were put into a tire to help somebody limp by, and then they never went back to fix it the right way.
And even if you've got a plug patch repair, there are limits to how big that puncture is before you really can't repair the tire, right?
Exactly. And most technicians will know that. And, if you've got a gigantic hole or it's in the shoulder of the tire, it might be in an area that it's flexing too much that they can't put a repair there. Or they say, we have to take this tire away, bring it to the retread shop and do a section repair for you to put it back into service. And depending on your operation, that may or may not be a solution for you. It just depends how many trucks you have and if you have a tire bank somewhere and you've got that freedom to do that.
Let's talk a little bit about specifying tires for particular applications, and particularly if you're going into the winter driving season. Down south, folks will often run we call steer tires all the way around the vehicle because they're not encountering winter conditions. It's warm. They're looking for fuel economy. That's great if you're running, let's say, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, whatever. Maybe. But if you're doing north-south routes, you're going routes where maybe you're going to be encountering bad weather, not a very good tire specification choice.
No, and to your point, too, a lot of times somebody will look at their tires and say, I've got a drive tire that has only got 7/30 seconds left, and I can run it legally until it's to 2/30 seconds. That's some pretty good rubber. I don't want to walk away from those miles because when there is less tread, to your point earlier, when a tire has less tread, it is more fuel efficient. But we need traction more so. So when you're looking right now, you have to do that calculation as to when should I put drive tires that are deeper, that are 30 seconds or 30 seconds at my start point so that I have good traction throughout the winter. And then, maybe if you have that opportunity and that degree of freedom, you can put that drive tire or that reed cap that has got a drive traction on it on during the right now. And then in the spring, if you wanted to redo all your tires and put on your summer tires and take those 4/32 or 7/32 drive tires that were that were removed, you can put those back on from your tire bank, assuming you have one. But again, all of this is about time and money and space too, of course. But if you have that opportunity to do that, you could do that. But the drive tires that are out there right now, the fuel efficient compounds and the silica that they have in the compounds make them work better in the wintertime. That it should really be something that you should consider versus a steer tire, or also called an all-position tire.
Right. And again, the looks can be deceiving. You've set the tire aside, you put it in your tire bank. It's been there for a little while. If it's been exposed to sunlight or ozone, you might start seeing some weather cracking. Maybe you don't want to use that tire. So just keep that in mind. You're supposed to keep them in a cool, dark, dry place. Treat them like mushrooms, right?
That's right. Good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little about something that's kind of controversial, or maybe not controversial, but there's a lot of debate over it. And that's whether or not you balance or do not balance. Some fleets, they believe in balancing, some don't. And they both have valid points. What do you think?
Oh, I didn't know this was coming up. Well, when I think about balance, there are a lot of things that go into the balancing the tire and the wheel. Because I just said tire and wheel, and really it's that overall rotating assembly, right? So we want to make sure that the tire and wheel are ready to go, but we have to make sure behind that, whether it's a steer or a drive, that all of that, the components that is in the wheel and operating, that they are all in good condition. With that being said, with the tire and wheel, the most important thing that can happen out the gate is to ensure that they were mounted properly onto the wheel. If the tire is mounted properly onto the wheel, that means that the beauty ring that's molded into the sidewall of the tire has got less of a variance than 2/32 of an inch. That one side of the sidewall isn't pinched to be shorter. Because even if it is pinched to be shorter and you balance it, you may put weight on the opposite side so that you're trying to make sure that rotating assembly, because it has a shorter sidewall due to being compressed, due to not being mounted properly. Because that has happened, you counteract it with a balance weight on it. And then as that tire wears off, you get another tire condition and you have irregular wear on the tread. And then you think, oh, these tires don't wear right. I have an alignment issue. I need to rebalance these tires. And then you spend more money and you start chasing the balance. The most important thing for a tire and wheel is for it to be properly mounted to that wheel right out the gate. Because when that tire is going around, tire goes around about 500 times a mile. So if we think about that for Stars and Grins, it goes 100,000, or it goes 100 miles. So 500 times 100 is 50,000 rotations. So 50,000 times of crimping in the wrong area, you're going to permanently change how that tire sits on that wheel right out the gate. So the tire to wheel mounting is the most important. And when that's done, then we can debate about balance and whether we should or we shouldn't.
Sometimes people will put... Okay, go ahead. Well, I was just saying, sometimes people put green stuff in the tires because they're worried about a slow leak or something like that. That can affect the balance too, right?
Oh, exactly. Any type of internal product that you can put in there, that can impact the balance. And some companies and some people sell an internal balance agent. So they put this stuff in the tire. It may be a sand or a glass bead or some other type of a material, and they put that in there so that when the tire is rotating, the tire feels balanced, which sounds good, except if the tire and wheel weren't originally balanced correctly as I had mentioned a minute ago, you will still see irregular wear in the tire tread. And then you'll think, oh, this stair tire didn't wear right. Must be the tire manufacturer. When no, it could have been the tire technician didn't do his job right, didn't use enough lubricant when he put the tire on the wheel. And when he did that, he ended up causing a mismount, which caused the tire to wear poorly.
So to maximize your service life for tires, number one, make sure the inflation pressure is set for the load being carried, and
Yeah.
be religious about that. Number two, treat the repairs that you need to make, properly. You want to do quality repairs. You don't want to cut corners. You don't want to just limp down the road because you're going to lose economic value out of that casing, particularly if you're going to be keeping that casing for retreading, as a lot of
Right.
operations will do. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other thing too is just to make sure you don't do things to that tire that it wasn't intended for. Like I say, you don't want to do repairs that are out of spec. You don't want to introduce materials into the tire cavity that's going to cause trouble later on. We hear these crazy stories about putting golf balls in tires for whatever reason. I guess to balance the tire. All that's going to do is tear the inside of the inner lining up, right?
Oh, 100%. And then when you go to the tire vendor and you say, hey, there's an issue with this, and your technician did it, some of the smarter shysters out there might say, well, what kind of golf balls did you put in there? You didn't put the right kind. And that's not the point at all. Don't put any golf balls in your tires, please.
We talked a little
Still
bit
being
about
done today.
we talked a little bit about specifying tires. We talked about traction. Uh, there's a lot of talk about low rolling resistance because everybody wants to get maximum fuel economy, do all the things you want to do, smart way and all that. Do you
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice grip or traction when you go with a low rolling resistance tire? In other words, can you have your cake and eat it too?
Yes, you can have your cake, eat it too, and not gain weight. The good news is that they have changed the compounding within the tires over the years. It used to be true that if it was a low rolling resistance tire, that it wore like butter. But all tire manufacturers that make a low rolling resistance tire today, they've changed the performance criteria by increasing. They add silica and other materials to add grip to the tires without having to add tread depth. And the other thing that they do is they add zigzag sipes they don't go straight down anymore. They zigzag down to the base of the casing. And by doing that, they're adding biting edges when it's wintertime and it's time to get traction. Those biting edges work to do that without adding extra tread depth.
The amount of engineering that goes into making all this happen is really quite amazing. People probably
Yeah.
don't think, tires just aren't black and round. There's a lot of intelligence that goes into the design, particularly with the compounding and the sipes and all the different patterns that are out there. And they're for a reason. And that's probably why you want to make sure you match tires across an axle, between axles, drives and so forth, because that really does
Mm-hmm.
make a difference. Not doing that will rob you of a fuel economy and service life.
And they'll wear poorly too. So from tire to tire, you should never have more than 430 seconds as a rule of thumb. If they're in dual or across the axle, you never want to go beyond 430 seconds of a variation. And if we're talking air pressure, we're talking 5 psi from inside to outside dual or from side to side.
And we never want to go beyond our allotted time because that's what we're going to do here in a second. So I'm going to have to stop it right here, but we're going to go back to the studios to Jimmy Mack. But I just want to thank you, Pat, for joining us on Tech Talk with TMC. Looking forward to have you back on the program real soon. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening.
Robert, I got to tell you, as always, we are gripped. I actually had to step out for a second on the phone, and while I was doing it, I actually was watching it on, I was actually reading the words on one of the apps as you were talking. It was actually telling me what you guys were saying. It's always a pleasure to be on multiple platforms so I can keep up with it no matter what happens while I'm on the air hanging out with you. What do you got on deck for next week?
Next week, we're going to have our TMC SuperTech 2025 Grand Champion, Matthew Sloan from FedEx Freight, join us in the program to talk about his experiences at the competition just a few weeks ago.
Oh, fantastic. And as always, we love having you on. And more importantly, we're going to be working on giving you your own imaging and your own bumper, by the way. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you, Robert.
Ooh, my own imaging. I don't know if I like that. That's scary things now.
I know.
That was a show a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's getting kind of professional. Thank you, Robert. We'll talk to you soon.
See you soon.
All right, man.